Boldwood presents The Paris Bookshop for the Broken-Hearted, written by Rebecca Raisin and read by Bronwen Price. Chapter 1. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect my life would implode in such spectacular fashion. How does it happen to a person like me, who plots every move with military precision? I have systems in place, and I trust those systems will keep me safe. Spoiler alert, they have not. Not only do I have myself to worry about, there's also my 13-year-old daughter, Eloise, to consider. She's not coping with the sudden move from London back to our hometown of Paris. I don't blame her. Who wants to be wrenched away from their friends and all they know? Despite my efforts to salvage the situation, my finances are in dire straits. I can't pay next month's rent, and the bills are piling up. So I had to take drastic action and get us packed up and on the move quick smart. Deep down, Eloise knows returning to Paris is truly the last resort. But that doesn't mean she's happy about it. What teenager would be? Me? Well, I'm grateful we've got somewhere to go in the midst of all this upheaval. Although fleeing like this, admitting defeat, is incredibly difficult under the circumstances. To say I feel like a failure would be an understatement. My entire adult life I've strived to get ahead so my daughter has a stable and secure home life. And now, here I am, my worst fears realised. Almost penniless, no home to call our own, and no job. I've got whiplash from the latest plot twists in this saga. But this is real life, not a lofty piece of fiction that I can close the cover on. It's a scary place to be when you're a solo mum. But I do my utmost to shove these worries aside for now and focus on what I can control. My daughter's happiness. Starting over. It's not all doom and gloom, though. My parents are waiting for us in Montparnasse with open arms. As the Eurostar chugs closer to Gare du Nord, I lean back in my seat as Eloise's head lolls softly on my shoulder. When she sleeps, all the anger she holds falls away from her pretty features. Anger that has been solely directed at me. Understandable. There is no one else for her to blame in our little family unit of two. I've done my best to diffuse her temper by explaining our shiny new, uncertain plan and all the reasons it will serve us well. But she insists leaving London is lame and that I've ruined her life. At these times, I find myself resorting to humour, admittedly not the strongest weapon in my arsenal, but it's what most parenting a modern-day teen books suggest. Get on their level. Make it fun. When that inevitably fails, I highlight the many adventures we can share, like spotting the Parisian gargoyles that scare away evil forces from sacred places. In reality, the gargoyles have a much more practical purpose. They channel rainwater away from walls to prevent erosion and water damage. I prefer to think of them as sentinels, sitting high on their lofty perches, keeping the city safe from all manner of dark forces. At these types of suggestions, I met with an eye roll from Eloise and a screwed-up moo that quite puts me back in my box. Still, I press on with my efforts because I've paid a fortune for those parenting books and I'm not willing to admit defeat. Not again, that is. Everything can't go belly up, or what does that say about me? We're nearly home now. The closer we get to Paris, the more I can breathe. The knots that have been tying up my shoulders slowly release. I never thought I'd leave London, especially under a cloud of suspicion. But here we are. At least I'll have my parents to lean on. My maman and Eloise are as thick as thieves, so I'm hoping she'll be able to get more than a monosyllable out of my daughter while I dust off the past. Or possibly have a breakdown. Why not both? It's best to keep my options open. I've learnt that much from these last hellish months, where I've pasted on a smile for so long it's resulted in lockjaw, which will probably end with me needing dental work as I grind my teeth to dust. I remind myself not to succumb to panic. I attempt some box breathing, a technique my former therapist taught me to help with anxiety. I've found myself using these calming methods more frequently lately, probably due to the fact my carefully laid plans have been doused and set on fire. That's the rage rearing its ugly head again. All the while I'm stuck on this train, pretending to read a novel while my heart beats staccato and my thoughts race too fast. The sudden onset of these wild swings of emotion have been tricky to navigate, while I outwardly tried to appear serene, in control, steadfast. Just like always, I am a together person, and I will remain that way, damn it! In the quiet of the moment, I mull over the fact my beloved systems let me down. Actually, let me rephrase that. How a man I loved and trusted manipulated the systems and let me down. The way I'd set up the computer program, there should have been an alarm, a flashing neon sign alerting me. Doom approaching, humiliation not far behind. Stupid me in love bubble land got lax and fully trusted in the man I'd given my heart to. My partner in love and business, Alexander, took a wrecking ball to both and then did a midnight flit. I'm usually a sane and rational person, but there have been moments since when I've been tempted to exact revenge on the guy for his crimes. Luckily for him, Eloise needs me most evenings, if only to tell me all the ways in which I failed, so I've been a little busy, a little too frazzled, to find his hideout and swap his toothpaste with hemorrhoid cream. That's probably the broken heart talking. In the chaos of untangling his deceit, there hasn't been time to process my own private hurt. Now he's out of my life for good, I can pretend he never existed. Alexander who? I've aged about a decade since the fallout, and all I really want to do is rant and rave and stomp my feet. But of course I can't, because it's not in my nature. I haven't planned for that, and my daughter would have a conniption if she saw her very calm, very poised mother lose her grip with reality. Sometimes being the adult is grossly unfair. Right now, a guttural cry, fists raised to an expanse of blue spring sky, eyes bulging as I expel all that pent-up rage would be just the ticket. Instead, I sit ramrod straight on this rollicking train, pretending to read, while I sip water that dribbles down my chin because of that previously mentioned lockjaw. The book I'm struggling with is a romance novel. Every word is like a stab to the heart. I'm only reading this lovey-dovey tome as it was a parting gift from my upstairs neighbour, who said reading romance novels is the only proven cure for a broken heart. I'd pressed her on the veracity of such claims, disappointed when she didn't have hard evidence to back that up. Instead, she huffed and puffed, thrust the book into my hands, and quickly shut the door. If I didn't believe burning books was a crime, this adorable enemies-to-lovers tale would already be engulfed in flames as I did an anti-love chant at the top of my lungs to warn others just like me who thought love at first sight was real. Guess what? It's not. It's a lie that all those romantic novelists spin for their own financial gain. How very dare they? I've got half a mind to send out a press release about the matter. Until I remember that I don't have a business anymore, and I'm also a persona non grata, and thus the book trade would probably assume I'd lost my mind. Which could be the case. since I've edited and enjoyed romance novels for the last 10 years or so, and am complicit in this love story farce. Well, not anymore. Eloise and I have left London with only 2 suitcases and a backpack full of books. I also have a couple of extra bags, but those are under my eyes and here for the duration. Belongings that we couldn't part with have been shipped over ahead of us, mostly things that are important to Eloise, keepsakes and sentimental items. After all this drama, I feel decidedly ancient at the ripe old age of 33. I had my daughter relatively young, at 20. Her papa, Etienne, my high school sweetheart, and absolute love of my 19-year-old life, took one look at the positive pregnancy test and ran away screaming, never to be seen again. I learned the hard way that no matter what precautions are in place, accidents can happen. But somehow it felt more divine than that. I'm not a believer in woo-woo, but when Eloise popped out earthside, I knew it was meant to be, no matter what hardships I faced being a young and solo mum. Still, Etienne's abandonment only firmed up my resolve that men were the devil and not to be trusted. From then on, I'd need a laser-like focus to achieve my dreams, with a baby in tow. Not long after Eloise's birth, it was back to university to continue with my degree. It wasn't easy juggling motherhood and study, and some days I wanted to give it all up and just be with my baby. But I'd picture her future and knuckle down and get to work. There wasn't the time or inclination for a romantic relationship, and honestly, I didn't miss it. Becoming a mother was a masterclass in learning to accept that you can't plan everything. You have to learn to be a little more flexible. Men were out, routines were in. After university, I worked my way up in the French publishing industry over the course of the next few years. When I was offered an entry-level publishing position in London, I jumped at the chance. The move was only doable because I had a small inheritance from my aunt, which helped make ends meet, what with the exorbitant cost of living and daycare expenses in a big city like London. I learned the true meaning of the word frugal and kept my eye on the prize. Levelling up. Ambition filled my gut when food didn't. And who enters the second act but a handsome bibliophile with a bad boy swagger? Alexander. He loved words, but was trained in numbers, dressed preppily, but spoke seductively. Had that whole take-charge energy that appealed. It helped he was the total opposite of my teddy bear teenage boyfriend, who'd done a runner before my belly had had a chance to swell. In my mind, that equated to teddy bears bad, bad boys good. Really, the science behind it was seriously lacking. I see that now. I, Coco Chevalier, hesitantly allowed myself the gift of returning to Love Bubble Land, a place where nothing good happens. Why didn't I remember that? Alexander promised me the world and delivered naught, setting fire to everything on his way out. It's also kind of ridiculous that a woman who edits sweeping love stories for a job has only had 2 longish relationships. Is it me? It must be me. Or it's them. I suppose having only 2 real loves means that the results aren't quantifiable. But I've always felt I couldn't just rush into love. I didn't want to risk introducing my daughter to a deadbeat. Except I accidentally did. Well, never again. The Eurostar screeches and hisses its way into the station, the pneumatic sound not dissimilar to the shrieking my daughter made when I told her we were leaving London. The racket jolts Eloise from her nap. She yawns and stretches her arms high above her, gracefully, like a swan unfurling. They say when you have a child, You wear your heart outside of your body. And it's true. Your heart is suddenly at risk, vulnerable, because it beats not just for you, but for the emotional connection to your child. Everything is magnified. It's all at once strange, intense, and beautiful. I hate trains, she says, rubbing at her reddened eyes, still swollen from an earlier crying jag, because her friend surprised her today to say yet another farewell. Is Mimère meeting us at the station? Eloise asks. No, darling. I told her we'd get the bus and meet her at the apartment to save her the trouble. We can go to Marché Edgar Quinet and buy a baguette, olives and brie for apéro. My parents live in an apartment in Montparnasse, right in the thick of all the action. The area is steeped in literary history. It was once a hotspot for impoverished artists in the 1920s, and was much less salubrious than it is now. To this day, it's a literary hub, and with my bookworm sensibilities, I love every square centimetre of it. It's also a foodie paradise and has open-air produce markets, high quality, but budget-friendly. I have accounted for Eloise wanting to splurge on some snacks when we arrive, so the market fits the bill and the finances, or lack thereof. I hate Paris. Sometimes it feels like teenagers hate everything. But according to the literature, they're figuring out their identity and grappling with being more independent. Makes sense to me, so I follow the script I've been taught. Be sympathetic. That's the spirit. Paris is a hellhole. I hope that by agreeing with her, she'll see I'm on her side. We're a team of two. Go team! She wrinkles her nose. Are you trying to be funny? I wrinkle my nose to mimic hers. What? No, I'm being supportive. Conversing with Eloise is like walking on tightrope. It's such a balancing act between getting it right and getting it wrong. I always seem to get it wrong, but I'm hopeful the more I learn about these tumultuous teenage years, the better equipped I'll be. I remember being a gangly teen, where small annoyances were heightened as those hormones roiled inside, so I do my best to be agreeable and slap on a smile that gives me a tension headache. Lockjaw is rearing its ugly head again. Let's eat our body weight in fromage and see if that helps matters. Eloise rolls her eyes and harumphs. This is such a fragile age. I wish I could say it was just the collapsing of our London life that provoked this sort of behaviour from my daughter. But alas, it was not. As soon as night became day on the dawn of her 13th birthday, my happy-go-lucky goofball changed, developed big emotions, big feelings that she still doesn't quite have a handle on. All totally normal, of course, but the swiftness of the transformation took me by surprise. Hence the scramble to educate myself so that we'd both come out the other side relatively intact. Cheese? That's your answer? How can cheese ever be wrong? It's cheese. By the curl of her lip, I surmise she isn't impressed. It can't hurt, can it? Buying food at the local market is more cost-effective than dining out in bistros. Until I find another job, things are going to be tight financially. And so far, the job hunting is not going well. In fact, I have the sneaking suspicion I've been blacklisted in the publishing industry in London. Another reason to hurry home and hope my job prospects are more successful in Paris. But I don't share any of that with my daughter, as she's likely to throw the hissiest of hissy fits, and I don't have enough paracetamol for that today. Surely returning home to Paris is the answer. I only hope news of the thefts hasn't reached the City of Lights. I've been cleared of any wrongdoing, but still, that taint remains. It's an actual nightmare that this has happened to me when I'm wholly innocent. I try not to dwell on it, or I'll self-combust. The train comes to a stop, Grab your bag, darling. Let's go. I step from the train onto the hectic platform and help Eloise down with her suitcase. We make our way through Gare du Nord station. The chaos, the intensity of so many bodies rushing about, even the gendarmes with their ginormous rifles and serious faces, put me strangely at ease. I feel comforted by the familiarity of being on home soil once again. Outside the station, I walk ahead of Eloise as she fumbles with her phone. A rather good-looking man approaches. We do a two-step shuffle to avoid walking into each other, but misstep into the same spot. We pause, and it's almost as if the world tilts, or I'm off balance. But I can't help feeling a sizzle of attraction as we lock eyes. That's until Eloise slams into the back of me, shooting me into the warmth of his arms. "Watch where you're going!" my daughter shrieks, and the moment is lost. The man slides out of my way and is gone. What was that? I've never felt a spark like that before. A coup de foudre. I turn to search for him on the crowded pavement, but he's gone. "Will you move?" Eloise spits. "I need Wi-Fi." I exhale the intensity. Coup de foudre. Love at first sight is a myth, a lie. My poor bruised heart is clearly malfunctioning. Why, then, did that brief interaction feel like a romance novel come to life? Chapter 2. There they are, mes belles filles. Maman takes me into her arms, holding me tight, as if she senses my nerve endings are frazzled to the extreme. Perhaps it's the permanent pinched expression on my face that makes me look like I suck lemons for fun in my spare time. That, and the good old lockjaw, that really is becoming a painful reminder that I'm holding on to my stress by my back molars alone. After Maman releases me, she pulls Eloise into a hug. "You've grown so tall, and it's only been a few months since I saw you last. Tu es jolie." She's right. My daughter is very beautiful, with poise like a ballerina, whereas I stand more rigid, like a tin man, a soldier. My dad says I have good bearing. My maman says I need to drink more wine to loosen up. She's French. That's her answer to everything. "Merci, mère," Eloise says, smiling wide, the sight warming my soul. It's the first real smile I've seen from her in a while, and it gives me a much-needed boost. Isn't it strange, the way your child's happiness is inextricably and forevermore linked with your own? When they part, I hand Maman the bag of goodies from the produce market. Her face lights up, as if I've done her a momentous favour, and not the other way around. "Merci, Coco. What a treat!" I follow her to the kitchen. She unwraps the various wedges of fromage and places them on a wooden board to allow them to come to room temperature, which is proper cheese etiquette. Cheese is hallowed in France. There are rules one must follow to preserve these long-standing traditions, such as which order to eat cheese. Usually you start with the milder cheeses, such as Comté, and end with the strongest, like Roquefort. Each style of cheese is sliced in a particular way, depending on the shape. Then you must navigate when it's suitable to eat the rind and when to avoid. I enjoy the fact there is a system for fromage. It makes perfect sense, and I do take exception if someone cuts a wedge of brie across the middle of the triangle. You can't uncut a poorly cut wedge of brie. The damage has been done. "I took the afternoon off so I would be here to welcome you both. But Dad had a new client meeting, so he had to stay on." "Oh, Maman, you didn't need to do that. We could have let ourselves in." "Any excuse to sneak out of work is fine by me." I squeeze her shoulder in thanks, as I survey their compact apartment and wonder how we're all going to cohabit in such a small space. There's no way we can avoid disrupting my parents' lives, with 4 of us living in such confined quarters, which isn't exactly fair on them. My parents are couples goals, as Eloise says, in business and in love. They taught me the value of being passionate about what you do, committing to a goal and striving to achieve it. They're entrepreneurs who work hard, always have, but it's never taken away from family time. As a kid, I wasn't social. I didn't fit in. I suppose I still don't, in a way. But when they introduced me to books, life suddenly made sense. I loved those early readers, and that love for literature only grew with each year. The cadence of a sentence, the rules of grammar, the beauty of a well-placed metaphor. I'd found my raison d'être. And now, I might have returned, a failed venture behind me, but I'll always be proud of what I did manage to achieve. This is an adventure, an extended sleepover with my parents. And right now, that sounds like just the tonic. Their quiet encouragement has allowed me to take calculated risks in business, knowing they'll be there, like now, if it doesn't work out. Recently, they've reminded me that reward comes with risk, and I've got plenty of time to start over. It's also a relief knowing I'll never have to hear an "I told you so" from them. Maman is born and bred Parisienne, and my dad is a Brit. I speak both languages fluently, but we mostly use French when we're all together. Growing up, we travelled back and forth across the pond many times as they dabbled various business ventures before returning to our hometown of Paris for good when I was about Eloise's age after they purchased a commercial laundry. I'm dead proud of what they've achieved, turning a small business on the brink of collapse into a thriving success. They're big on the whole jump outside of your comfort zone thing. I'm a little more risk-averse, but have still learned from their example. When is Dad due home, then? New client meetings usually involve long bistro lunches, where deals are made over a glass of vin rouge and the plat du jour. Around 5, although he said he'd try and sneak off earlier if he could. He's desperate to see you both. Alongside Eloise, my parents are a bright spot in my life. Always have been. I could announce I'd inadvertently killed Alexander by spooning arsenic in his tea instead of sugar, and they'd simply pull me in for a hug and say accidents happen and ask if I need help getting rid of the corpse. They're good people, inside and out. Why don't you put your things in the guest bedroom and I'll make apéro? Apéro, from the word apéritif, is the lull a few hours before dinner when friends and family come together and share a drink and finger food. Sure, but Dad won't be happy he's missing out. I get my obsession for fromage from him. There's not a cheese too pungent for his tastes. I'm sure my French maman found this endearing. If you don't revere cheese in France, there's a very good chance you'll be booted out. Such is the passion for it. I'll make him a plate for later, or he'll never forgive us for eating all the Roquefort. I've never known anyone who eats as much blue cheese as he does. If I imbibe too much, the sharp, tangy flavour makes my eyes water, but my dad can eat an entire wedge of it with no adverse effects. You'd swear he had French blood. Maman's laugh follows me down the hallway as we drag our suitcases to the spare bedroom. It's on the smaller size, but typical of a Parisian apartment, and a double bed takes up most of the space. We hoist our cases on the bed and unzip them. I'm not sharing a bed with you, am I? Eloise says, her tone implying sharing a bed with her mother is the very worst outcome she could imagine. I suppose it's cringe, as she says on the daily, a generational slang thing where they cut words in half. For what purpose? To save time? It doesn't make sense. And the editor in me twitches. But I can't fix a whole generation. I know. I've tried on my own daughter and didn't get far. You're delulu if you think I am. I'm especially confused by the phrase delulu, aka delusional. Is it so much harder to say an extra syllable? I know I'm missing the point, and language has been altered since the dawn of time, but still, it's a head-scratcher. She stares me down with so much intensity, it gives me pause. It's so grown up, so jarring to see such a look from her. Well? Usually, I can internally brush off these Eloise-isms, but right now, my patience is taut. I remind myself to take a deep breath and think of the turmoil she suffered because of my choices. Maybe I am delulu. Yes, darling, we'll be sharing this room and this bed, as there are no other options right now. It's not ideal, but it's not forever. We're lucky to have a fallback like this. I'm not sharing a bed with my mother, for crying out loud! I recall the advice from the parenting books. Smile, give short, practical solutions in a moderated tone of voice. Okay. I paste a genial smile on my face that gives me a headache. You can sleep on the sofa if you wish. I hate this! Eloise flicks her long blonde hair and skulks out of the room. With a sigh, I unpack our belongings into a set of drawers so I can stow away our suitcases under the bed. In time, I'm hoping Eloise will understand the relocation is for the best. Who wouldn't want to live in the 14th arrondissement of Paris? There are les catacombes de Paris on one side, just macabre enough for her sensibilities, and La Tour Eiffel on the other, perfect for Instagram-worthy happy snaps she's fond of. It's close to Jardin du Luxembourg and the Pantheon, and there are hundreds of other little gems tucked away around every turn. After I'm finished unpacking, I sit on the edge of the bed and slip my phone from my pocket to check my emails, hoping I've reached the interview stage of any of the jobs I've applied for in Paris. All I find is a plethora of rejections. I can almost taste the worry. But I remind myself, I'm home now, we have a safe space to stay, and that is one very big obstacle that I don't need to stress about for the moment. It might be better to get out there and pound the pavement, putting feelers out. How does one go from the stunning heights of publishing director of their own publishing house to completely unemployable? It's best not to dwell on the unfairness of it all, as that will achieve zilch. Instead, I picture myself finding a job, settling in, my daughter blooming in Paris and telling me she loves it here. One can only hope. I leave the phone on the bedside table, vowing not to check my emails again today, and join Eloise and Maman in the kitchen. Coco, can Eloise have a small glass of wine? Maman arches a regal brow as she makes the joke she always does, ready for my usual retort. It's a myth that French children grow up drinking wine. It's not the case at all. Absolutely not. She's only 13, and I've got a feeling she'd be a mean drunk. I throw a big smile my daughter's way, and almost fall over backwards when her own lips quirk upwards. Maman gives me a wink. Will Eloise settle here under the supportive gaze of my parents? Part of me thinks so. While my daughter breathes fire at me, she's always respectful towards her grandparents. I pour wine for us and an apple juice for Eloise. Welcome home. We clink glasses. Merci, Maman. She pats my hand, the way mothers do, a gesture that speaks 1,000 words without uttering even one. Tears prick the back of my eyes. I want to tell her I'm going to fix my life. This is just a blip, that I'm so grateful for her and Dad and their unwavering support. But the words won't come. I have a feeling she knows when she hugs me tight. There really is no place quite like home. Chapter 3. A few days later, despite Eloise's many protestations, we walked together for her first day at a new school in the 6th arrondissement, Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It's a little further away than expected, but they have a music programme, so it's worth the extra distance, as Eloise is musically inclined, even though it's mostly self-taught with the help of YouTube. The school is a 20-minute walk from the apartment, or there's the option of catching the bus, which Eloise has point-blank refused. The bus would be more efficient, I say, thinking of my parents, who have offered to walk Eloise to and from once I'm gainfully employed. Oh, buses are so mid. Mid? What does that mean? Mediocre, I guess. How do you get mid from mediocre? I'm genuinely curious about Gen Z slang. It can be clever at times, but mostly it makes no sense, like this skibbity word nonsense that belies translation, at least to me. Who cares? I do. If it's from mediocre, wouldn't it be med, not mid? You're overthinking it. I guess so. I let it go, with the other unanswered questions to the great unknown. This morning, the air is perfumed by spring flowers, and it's bright and sunshiny, and it makes it feel like my bones are defrosting after a long, cold London winter. Of course, it's spring in London too, but when we left, it hadn't exactly sprung yet. We walk along the bustling boulevard du Montparnasse. The neighbourhood has changed, yet somehow stayed the same. Cafes as far as the eye can see that all have the ubiquitous weaved rattan bistro chairs in the Maison Drucker style of yesteryear. I love that about Paris. The good things don't change. The yeasty scent of fresh-baked baguettes permeates the air as we pass a boulangerie. Traffic is heavy, cars toot, people hurry, and tourists meander, snapping photos. Eloise's eyes widen as we stop at the window of a patisserie where petit four cakes sit in colourful rows like miniature artwork. Up ahead, I notice one of my favourite haunts is still open and doing a bustling trade. Ooh, Eloise! See the shop front with the blue and white striped awning? Le Crêperie Breton? That's where I'd go after high school to regroup and read. By eating your feelings? Illogical, but true. I've been known to partake in a bit of comfort eating. School wasn't always easy for me. Because you're a nerd? Am I a nerd? She manages to screw up one side of her face, which I've come to learn means, duh, obviously. You got straight A's. You read your textbooks before the school year started, just for fun. You graduated at the top of all your classes. Nerd behaviour. I see. You were ahead of your time, Mum. Nerd culture is mainstream now. Trust me to have peaked too soon. Always the way. She laughs, a tinkling musical sound, as we walk past the crêperie. We should have had breakfast there, Eloise says, as the syrupy scent of sugar assails us. There's nothing quite like the humble crêpe au sucre, a plain crêpe with lashings of melted butter and sprinkled with icing sugar. Why don't we go after school? I'm conserving funds, but have allocated a small amount for the first day of school celebrations. She considers my offer. There's such a dichotomy to this age, the push and pull of child to teen. Her first expression is one of anticipation and childlike wonder about simple pleasures such as a sugary crêpe, but it's soon replaced by the hard mask of a teenager, as if she's railing against getting excited about something so basic as food. This strange age of development is a gut punch at times. There's that sense of an ending. The innocence and glee of childhood vanishes without warning one day. No, actually, I hate crepes. A mere minute ago, she was of a different opinion. Teenagers are contrary. But I've learned the hard way it's best not to point this out, as being contrary in nature, they will often disagree. I've done the research. This behaviour stems from wanting to fit in, although I do want to assure her it's perfectly acceptable to find happiness in a crepe, to get icing sugar over her face, and crow about how delicious every ooey gooey, sweet, buttery morsel is. But I do not. It's the way of things. It's probably me who needs to accept 13 is the new 30, and the little girl with pigtails is gone. The creperie disappears behind us. Are we close to school? She asks. I don't want to be late on my first day. She's a lot like me in that respect. Punctual, organised, as much as her age allows. Oui, it's just up there. I point to the imposing black gates of the school. I'm thankful she's bilingual and speaks fluent French, so this transition won't be marred by any language barrier. Right now, she's speaking a mix of both languages, as if she's not quite sure which words to use when it's just us two. We approach a group of teens who have their eyes glued to mobile phones while they push and shove in that joking, tactile way teenagers do. It's my worst nightmare, others encroaching on my personal space like that. But it doesn't seem to worry these kids. Eloise stops and turns to me, dropping her voice to a hiss. Why can't I do this on my own? When I holiday here, Mimir doesn't follow me everywhere. I'm allowed my independence. I give her my well-practiced, ever-patient, mothering smile, the one that shoots pain into my skull. Now that she's seen the other students, she doesn't want to lose face having her mum here. I get it. But still, she might have holidayed here, but she hasn't lived here since she was a toddler. She doesn't know how to navigate this area yet. I want to make sure you get to school safely each day, if that's okay with you. I'll miss her today, but a break from each other will do us both the world of good. Come on. I nimbly dodge groups of teens to get to the entrance. I'll pretend I don't know you, if you prefer. I don't want her first day marred by the fact her mother is a nerd. I'm rewarded with a scowl. Eloise often reminds me of a fire-breathing dragon. A totally normal part of development, precipitated by an influx of hormones. It's too late for that, what with you incessantly talking to me and all. Teenagers have the unique ability to believe that the entire world is hyper-fixated on them. I steal a glance around us, and not one person is looking our way, so I feel her assumptions are incorrect, but I keep that to myself. Okay. Cars are double parked on the pavement, and traffic whizzes by. There's the screech of brakes, a siren wailing in the distance, the cacophony of Paris life. Just inside the gates, a few parents mill about, chatting. I'll walk myself home, now that I know the way. I have an internal battle with myself. Fight, or accept. Eloise knows the Montparnasse area well, but she hasn't ventured around the 6th very often, and definitely not alone. She is creeping closer to 14, which in my view is still too young. I assess how I feel about it from a safety perspective, and decide that I'm just not comfortable yet with her walking so far from the apartment without an adult. It might be different once she makes friends and they walk in a gaggle together, but not right now, not by herself. I'll be waiting at the bench by the park over there for you after school. We can stop at Le Crêperie Breton, or perhaps an ice cream shop, as a treat to celebrate your first day at school. She scoffs, contempt marring her pretty features. A treat? What am I? Like 4? I paced on a smile, when all I really want to do is admonish her for being a brat. But maybe her nerves are the driving force, and I need to give her some grace. No, you're not 4, darling. When you were 4, you were a joyous little thing, always smiling and happy. You're not like that now. And whose fault is that? I pinched the bridge of my nose. I know the answer to this one. Mine? Oui. And just like that, she spins on her heel and enters the gates. No au revoir, no sign of la bise, the French custom of brushing cheeks in greetings and goodbyes. I take a shuddery breath and try to exhale all the worry. Nerves, that's all it is. Not for the first time. I wish she had a father figure in her life. Someone to help me with the weight of things, to shore me up when I'm depleted, be a sounding board for Eloise. But so far, that hasn't happened. Even Alexander refrained from any parenting responsibilities with Eloise, claiming he had no experience and that Eloise would only incinerate him with her galactic force stare and he'd really rather not be involved. When she'd argue with me, he'd disappear down the local pub for a few beers. I'd felt oddly abandoned at those times, like he didn't quite love me enough to try and be part of our little family. As I fight negativity from hijacking the bright spring day, I walk around Saint-Germain-des-Prés, my mind on my daughter, hoping she has a great first day. I stop by a patisserie and order a café crème. While I wait, I check my emails, hoping there's a sparkly new job interview waiting patiently for me. My coffee arrives as I scroll down my inbox. We're sorry to inform you that you were unsuccessful at this time. It's a concern. I've made allowances for 4 weeks of nominal living expenses. What if I'm not employed by week 5 and my funds are depleted entirely? The last thing I want to do is ask my parents for monetary help. It would be yet another failure and proof that I'm grossly incompetent at forward planning, a skill I once prided myself on. My life is glitching. Is the solution a power down and reboot? If only it were that easy. I keep scrolling and find an email from a French publishing pal named Fleur from her personal account. We haven't spoken in an age, but I texted recently to give her the heads up that I'd applied for an editorial position at the same publishing house as her, in a different division, and asked if she could vouch for me. Fingers crossed, the tide is turning. Bonjour, Coco. I'm sorry to email instead of speaking in person, but things are hectic, and I wanted you to know ASAP. There's been much chatter in the office after you applied for the editorial role here. Unfortunately, after the London difficulties, the powers that be think it best to keep their distance. I'm so sorry. I did speak up for you, but they wouldn't be swayed. I hate being the bearer of such awful news, but I thought you should know what you're up against. I know you've got Eloise to look out for. Let's catch up when you're settled in. Bien amicalement, Fleur. Mon Dieu. The tides aren't turning. They're gathering into one almighty tsunami. I bite down on a scream while I contemplate what this means for my future. I am a publishing pariah. How did I get embroiled in a mess such as this? Alexander, with his seductive eyes and smooth tongue, that's how. He often called me ambitious, as if it was a negative trait and not aspirational. He bandied terms like workaholic, as if it was a character flaw, and not that I had the forethought to schedule my daily timetable in an effective manner so that I completed tasks in an efficient fashion. Shouldn't these skills be lauded? I shoot a reply to Fleur, thanking her for the insider information and the chance to catch up in the future. I finish my café crème and leave some coins on the table, waving au revoir to the waiter as I go. The news, having evidently spread to Paris, significantly shrinks my chances of finding editorial employment. Though, as a former publishing director myself, I'd take a wide berth too when hiring someone who'd been embroiled in such matters. So I'm not surprised about their stance. The simplistic part of me had, I suppose, hoped my experience would speak for itself, and that someone would let me explain face to face. Alas, that's not to be. What can I do to support my daughter? It's time to rethink the plan. Chapter 4. The last day of the school week arrives as I'm helping Eloise find her backpack, sports uniform and library bag. I walk her to school as she chatters away 10 to the dozen, her mood buoyant, which makes me very happy indeed. Maybe this move has been for the best. Can she have slid into a new environment so easily, so quickly? I'm further convinced she has when she gives me a fluttery little wave and joins a trio of smiley-faced girls waiting by the school steps. I've only heard her mention one of them so far, a brunette by the name of Leia, who is also a Swiftie and loves friendship bracelets and boy talk. The winning trifecta, it seems. I'm lost in a daydream as I wander aimlessly along Rue du Maréchal Harispe and come out by the Champ de Mars, the large public green space between the Eiffel Tower and the École Militaire. I zigzag hordes of tourists who gather to take pics of La Dame de Fer, the Iron Lady, as locals call it. I've wandered further than I meant to, and gaze around, working out if it's best to take the metro back to Montparnasse or walk. What else is there to do all day? I've applied for every job in publishing that I can find, even ones I'm overqualified for, but haven't managed to snag a single interview. Having swathes of the day unaccounted for is strange. I'm so used to being busy, time running away from me. I suppose my confidence has taken a hit, and I'm in a state of flux. And after Fleur's email, I'm not quite brave enough to face any more industry pals. Before things turn dire with my finances, I must take action. It's time to broaden my parameters, finding a job outside the only industry I have ever felt at home in. Whatever it takes, I'll do it, so I can save for our own Paris pied-à-terre and get some semblance of normality back. My heart is full of hope as I gaze at the Eiffel Tower. With the sun on my face, I feel relaxed, lulled by the sights and sounds of my home city, with jovial holidaymakers all around. A disturbance pulls me from my reverie, and I'm jostled forward. A stream of curse words ring out as I turn to an angry Frenchman, who I can only see in side profile, as he holds a proprietorial hand in front of me. Who is this, then? He argues with the 3 obscenely tall men who wear dark hoodies pulled up over their heads, despite the sunny weather. "Give those back, immédiatement!" While the Frenchman berates them, I take a moment to survey him. He's got fire in his eyes, as if ready to fight, but he's far too handsome to be putting his good looks at risk like this. So why is he? And then I recognize him. Mon Dieu! It's the guy from outside the train station, whose arms I literally fell into. Truthfully, I've replayed that first brief encounter a few times since then. Is this some sort of sign? Fate? I don't usually believe in all that mumbo-jumbo, and yet I blank the melee, mesmerized by every small detail about this man, from the sultry curve of his lips to his deep tan, as if he spends his summers in the French Riviera. He's got a Jude Law in his talented Mr. Ripley days look about him, and for a very brief moment, I fall a little bit in love. Before I catch myself, the sultry curve of his lips. I clearly miss editing romances, that's all it is. A little bit in love with him. I shake my head, hoping to dislodge the fugue. There's a quarrel happening before me, and I am making goo-goo eyes at some stunning stranger. My life is already a shambles. I don't need to add any more complications into the mix. The Frenchman gives the tallest guy a great big shove. I gulp, wondering what I've inadvertently stepped into. Should I help? What if it's a drug deal gone wrong? I could be an unwitting accomplice. Could it be a domestic dispute? Perhaps the hot French guy stole one of their girlfriends. And I will not support a cheater, no matter how sultry their lips are. No, it's best I stay well out of the fray, since it doesn't concern me. The trio dart glances over their shoulders and speak fast and low to one another in the shadiest of ways, while the Frenchman continues rebuking them, seemingly not concerned for his own safety. It's then I notice the zip on my handbag is open. Je suis un idiot! Being pickpocketed is always a risk in the tourist hotspots of Paris if you're not aware of your surroundings. Usually, this is easily avoided by using common sense, keeping your bag zipped up and placed to the front of your body, not forgotten, blowing about in the breeze behind you like I've just done. An open invitation for those with the gift of sleight of hand to steal without the victim feeling a thing. All my systems are breaking down, as if someone else is in control of the motherboard. I am never this stupid. Usually, that is. With great reluctance, one of the gang hands my purse and phone back, only because my rescuer is yelling, nay, roaring for the gendarmes. They take off running, and I turn to the blustery, red-faced Frenchman, who blows out a breath before his features relax into a more amiable expression. In perfectly modulated English, he says, "I'm so sorry that happened to you. You must be very careful around the highly trafficked tourist areas." I mean, it's good advice, but I already know that. Just a small lapse in concentration. Oui, merci beaucoup. My voice peters off as his smile drops away. Why the sudden change in demeanour? I'm about to tell him this is actually our second chance meeting when he says, "Êtes-vous français?" Am I French? Oui? I must look like a tourist. Has my time away changed me so dramatically that I'm no longer recognisable as one of them? Je suis parisienne.